first want to show you where he was that day at the moment that Charlie Kirk was shot and killed. So if you take a look, this is sort of his vantage point, only he's on the roof of this building. Now, if you stop it right there for a second, you can see the top of the tent. The top of that tent is where Charlie Kirk was when he was shot. Officer Bagley is on top of the roof of that building. It is this building. We're now looking at it from behind. You see the tent, and then you see the courtyard. Now, if we freeze it there for one moment, and we look at the large United States flag, that is the roof where Officer Bagley was. That's where he is observing what is happening, and the tent is just below him. But he was able to see Charlie Kirk, part of Charlie Kirk, as this was happening.
On a warm September afternoon in Utah, a crowd of nearly 3,000 people gathered to hear conservative activist Charlie Kirk speak. Within minutes, that gathering would become the scene of an assassination watched by millions online. Kirk, just 31 years old, co-founder of Turning Point USA and a close ally of President Trump, was shot in the neck while answering a question from the audience. He died from his injuries. What followed was one of the most closely watched criminal investigations in recent American history. Before we go further, if true crime cases like this keep you up at night wanting answers, hit subscribe to 3 True Crime Stories right now and make sure you turn on notifications. We break down real cases with real evidence, no exaggeration, no guesswork, just the facts as they unfold in court. Tap that subscribe button so you never miss a part of this story. And please like this video if you want justice for Charlie Kirk.
I want to take you to the courtroom and let's listen to his testimony about what he observed that day in the moments that Charlie Kirk is shot and killed.
You were securing the Hall of Flags walkway, correct?
Yes.
On the south end.
Yes.
Can you describe what you were seeing? What did you observe?
On that day, I observed Charlie going back, doing some meet and greet with some people, getting some photos taken. He then came underneath the Hall of Flags and went to his tent, and he was there answering questions and talking to individuals that would ask him questions.
The tent you're referring to, is that the tent that we see when it was set up in the courtyard?
Yeah, that white square tent.
The white top?
Yes, he was under that.
Fast forward to about 12:20 or so a little bit after noon, the noon hour. What happened? What did you see and what did you hear?
I heard an individual talking to Charlie, and I happened to kind of glance over the edge of the railing about that time. I could see the right side of Charlie's shoulder, so not his whole body, because he was underneath the tent, so I could only see probably the right side of his body. He was answering a question, kid asking him a question, and then I heard a shot fired.
Do you know what time that was?
Yes.
What time was that?
12:23.
What did you see?
At that moment, I saw him lean to the left. So
when you say him, you
Charlie.
Charlie.
So I saw him go to the left because I could no longer see the right side of his body. So he went further underneath the tent to the north side of the tent, so left.
Okay.
Now, investigators moved fast. 23-year-old Tyler Robinson was identified as a suspect and, according to testimony, turned himself into police roughly 30 hours after the shooting. He was charged with aggravated murder, and prosecutors have indicated they will seek the death penalty. Robinson has not yet entered a plea. At a preliminary hearing in Provo, Utah, the public got its first real look at the evidence prosecutors say connects Robinson to the shooting. A university police officer testified he heard the gunshot from a nearby rooftop, recognized the sound as a rifle rather than a handgun, and discovered an empty holster near where he was standing. That discovery led him to a second rooftop, where investigators later say surveillance footage captured a figure matching Robinson's description.
No matter how you look at this case, I always come back to the fact that Charlie Kirk was a father and a husband. A father and a husband first before he's anything else. And this is a murder case. Children who don't have a father, a wife who doesn't have her husband, a family that has been impacted forever. Children whose lives are going to be so different. And that's the reality of this case. And that makes it no different than any other murder.
A state investigator walked the court through hours of campus surveillance video, tracing a man prosecutors identify as Robinson arriving early that morning, returning hours later in different clothing, and eventually making his way toward the rooftop overlooking the courtyard where Kirk was speaking. Investigators also testified about forensic evidence, including DNA testing tied to a rifle recovered near the scene, along with shell casings found afterward. Perhaps the most striking testimony came from Robinson's roommate and romantic partner, Lance Twiggs, who told investigators that Robinson said, quote, "He wishes he hadn't done it." Prosecutors also presented text messages and a note they say Robinson left behind, along with an online message sent shortly before he turned himself in. The defense has pushed back hard, challenging the DNA analysis and questioning how some of this evidence was gathered and interpreted. Despite what prosecutors call overwhelming evidence, skepticism has spread rapidly online, with some questioning whether the man seen in the surveillance footage is truly Robinson at all. It's a case built on video, forensics, and alleged admissions, but also one still very much in dispute. A judge will ultimately decide whether this case moves to trial. But before we get there, we need to understand exactly what happened inside that courtroom. That's where we're headed next, in part 2 of this story here on 3 True Crime Stories. Subscribe now so Tyler Robinson didn't wait to be found. On the evening of September 11th, roughly 30 hours after Charlie Kirk was shot, Robinson arrived at the Washington County Sheriff's Office in St. George, Utah, accompanied by his parents and a family friend. He was placed in a recorded interview room where investigators confirmed his identity and date of birth on camera. At the same time, in separate rooms, agents interviewed his mother, his father, and the family friend who had come with them. Robinson was formally arrested there just before 4 in the morning on September 12th. It's worth pausing on that detail. This wasn't a case of police tracking someone down and closing in with force. According to testimony, Robinson came to them with his own family beside him. For Erica Kirk, the preliminary hearing brought frustration as well as grief. She's publicly expressed concern that not all of the evidence has been shown to the public, arguing that gaps in transparency only fuel outside theories she doesn't believe in. The judge overseeing the case has had to balance several competing interests at once: the rights of the victim's family, the public's right to a transparent trial, and the defendant's right to a fair one, especially significant given that prosecutors are seeking the death penalty. At the center of the state's case is Lance Twiggs, Robinson's roommate and romantic partner, who described their relationship in a recorded interview played in court. He said the two met in 2023 and began dating a few months later. On the morning of September 10th, Robinson left their apartment unusually early. Twiggs said he didn't hear from him again until an automated message arrived close to 11 that night. Twiggs also described finding a note beneath Robinson's keyboard, one he photographed before putting it back. According to testimony, the note said Robinson had the opportunity to, quote, take out Charlie Kirk, and that he was going to take it. Text messages shown in court appear to follow, Twiggs asking if Robinson was involved, and Robinson allegedly replying, I'm sorry. The next day, Twiggs said Robinson paced around their home, appeared to cry, and told him he wished he hadn't done it before agreeing to turn himself in. Prosecutors argue this combination, a note, a confession by text, and a voluntary surrender, forms direct evidence rarely seen this clearly in a criminal case. The defense, however, has pushed back hard on the forensic side. An ATF forensic biologist testified under cross-examination that DNA evidence can show presence but can't determine how or when it was deposited, raising the possibility of transfer between people who lived in the same household. She also confirmed that DNA matching Robinson was found on multiple parts of the rifle recovered near the scene, with likelihood ratios prosecutors call statistically overwhelming. A separate ATF firearms examiner testified that comparison of a bullet fragment to the recovered rifle was ultimately inconclusive, meaning the evidence could neither confirm nor rule out a match. The defense highlighted that finding as a gap in the state's case, while prosecutors point to the surrounding evidence as still substantial. What's clear is that this case now sits between two competing narratives, one built on an alleged confession and a voluntary surrender, the other built on challenging the science meant to prove it. A judge will ultimately decide if it's enough to move forward to trial. If you want to understand exactly how that decision plays out, make sure you're subscribed to 3 True Crime Stories, because this case is far from over and we'll be covering every next step as it happens.